In the search for the news story, we need a sense of adventure. The Infinite Imaginarium crew is going to discuss the project, Science and Non-Duality conference of this year in October. And what is the Imaginarium as its own entity? It's growing, it's evolving, and we're really focusing on transforming and manifestation. Doing things in the real world is a better way to assert our truth, not by proclaiming it, by enacting it. Being the change we want to see. Protest as a way of being. We need art for inspiration, transformation, and manifestation, not just for entertainment, corporations, or monetization. Because in the end of history, it will be beauty that sets consciousness free. So welcome to the show. This is The Project with your host, Satori D. We have Kevin here. And we're basically talking about, we want to cover the Science and Non-Duality conference of this year in October in San Jose. It's actually something that brought me and Kevin together. Early on Minds, when I was still, I guess, finding my voice and what I was interested in, I came across Science and Non-Duality. I had a whole series of things where blogs where I talked about consciousness, and I also was posting videos from Science and Non-Duality on my page. And it was kind of very cool and interesting in the beginning of Minds. I also met Michael, who also is Studio 18. And we actually first met in this conversation of this thread, and we were basically talking about like quantum physics, about the nature of reality, consciousness, and it really it was really nice because prior to that, I don't think I ever had a really deep conversation like that anywhere else. Usually those deep conversations were saved for late nights, getting high with my friends or on psychedelics. So it was a neat experience. And ever since I had that first spark of that of what can be possible, I kept on pursuing this thought, this idea. And I remember in the beginning, I kind of even made it like almost every weekend. I'll pick a new lecture off of the Science and Non-Duality page and post it, and then make sure to tag Kevin, tag a couple other people. And it was kind of funny because I always viewed it as, oh, let's have like a movie night of watching a lecture. And we used to have pretty good threads where we would talk about it. So it's kind of always been in the back of our heads. And I think this is the thing, right? If you're waiting for everything to be perfect or to be right or whatever, then you're going to be waiting forever. So, but I think we're in a good place, and we're going to push ourselves to be ready. I also was mentioning earlier, we had this meeting a little bit about the project, and we're trying to get things, our ducks in a row and really be focused. When I said the lines about we need art for inspiration, transformation, and manifestation, and not just for corporations and monetization. It's something that I always kind of think about, but those lines came to me, like almost all my good lines, when I wake up from a dream, and they come to me just like in a flash, and I always hold those in. And I think too, part of that comes into now what we need to do is we have the passion, and it kind of goes to the hard part, the focus, the time, and this continuous sustainable motivation. And I think this is where the Imaginarium show, the Imaginarium group, and we even have this kind of work group that we're doing, an email chain kind of thing, to help me, Kevin, and Nikki to really sustain that focus and to bringing about executing this idea, the project. It started with a spark of an interest, spark of an idea. Then we kind of been testing it in these think tank sessions and threads and in our own minds. And now we're kind of proclaiming it, putting it out there, but also to reconfirm it to ourselves that this is the project in order for us to keep this momentum that we have with the Infinite Imaginarium show, to keep on pushing ourselves to evolve, to grow. And like I said, I really firmly know the experience of art as a transformation, manifestation power. And we want to harness this focus, this attention, this energy, and really kind of channel it into being the change we want to see. And I stole this line, protest as a way of being, from Douglas Rushkoff. He has his own podcast called Team Human. And if you guys ever heard of it or don't know about it, check it out. So that's where we are right now. And actually, I would like to bring Kevin in. If you're first, did I introduce you to Science and Non-Duality? I'm not totally sure on that, but I remember early on Minds, we were focused on that a lot as our resource, one of our main resources for posting stuff and having talks.
So I was in the process of finding out the depth of the illusion. I'd been watching a bunch of documentaries about history and government and education system and food and medicine and vaccinations and all this stuff. Dan, when I was on Minds, and I got really active because I closed my Facebook account on December 31st, 2015, after I read their last terms of use statement. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I can't submit myself as informational cattle to the system. And then I ran across one of your posts to describe, I think it was the description to entanglement. And it was something I'd never heard of before, the fact that information can be shared instantaneously across any distance from two molecules that have been in proximity. And I laid awake for quite a while listening to myself and starting to watch the videos. And I also started watching the Secret Key Activator series about the holographic universe. And it kind of became fundamentally apparent that science was starting to show us things that Eastern methodologies, Eastern philosophers had been talking to us about for a long time. And those early episodes that we were posting, they were really all the cutting edge stuff with Dr. Bruce Lipton and many of the other people that are in the Noetic Institute. And it really was just a fascinating, completely game-changing way of looking at existing in the world. And a lot of those things started to transform the way I looked at everything, especially in conjunction with the Secret Key Activator series, and then starting to do the reading in the holographic universe, and starting to comes with the fact that the standard model that we're all presented with throughout our lives, it was sort of touched on in sciences, with Albert Einstein and Max Planck and those guys, and they just barely sort of cracked the door with a few sentences about the fundamental nature of physical reality, of the actuation of the space in all things, the physicality, the densities were conceptual and perceptual to our own observation, and that the fact of being an observer was the fundamental driving force in our perceived reality. And what really kicked open the door for me when you and I started talking, Dan, was I want to conceive what one additional dimension might be like. How can I get my mind free enough from our three-dimensional reality to try and look for things that help me to even visualize what that other dimension past height, width, depth, and space-time might be. And it was just an incredible journey, with a lot of things that I posted over the last couple of years, and it's really opened the door to seeing really the construct that we're sold on is so full of holes, and the methods that we're trained from youth to live within are fundamentally flawed for specific purposes. And it's, especially in this modern political time, pretty clear what those purposes are, what the keys that they use to sort of convince us to believe life is as we kind of have seen it now. And science and non-duality looks to separate those division lines and show us the balance between the mathematical factuations and the atomic nature and the spiritual necessity, the spiritual truth of our reality, all as one cohesive package, and not simply as us just being matter and a brain, because we all intrinsically in our hearts know we are far more than that. There are just too many phenomena that take place with our intuitions and our interactions that don't bode under that model. They don't hold water. They're a percentile of reality, like the 4 or 5% of the universe that we can see and identify as matter. We don't know what 95% of everything around us is yet. And yet here we are in this world, pulling the world apart, pulling each other apart. And it just came fundamentally clear that science and non-duality was one of the great tools to open our minds and our hearts to a much broader scope of existing within the world. So I would say that moving into the project in my mind became a focus in the fact that we needed to be there firsthand. I needed somehow to, initially it was you and I, Dan, and we were going to try and get Pseudos 18 to come, to get exposure to the Minds.com audience of that there's more than one way to live in this world and to see it. And I think we've been pounding that message pretty hard for some time now. And the project should lead us to something really, really magical and fundamental. And maybe, Dan, you might like to sort of expound about what the vision is going forward, and I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, there's a lot of things really recently, and it always happens like this. There's this great saying, when the student is ready, the master will appear. And, when you get ready for something, or when you're ready to see something, you can't help but see all these signs, all this information comes to you, everything starts connecting. And I'll go into this brief little story about how recently my own personal momentum has been coming up. And it goes, I like using quotes because I read a lot, I write, that's why I do these little poems, and it all connects to me through words a lot. And there's a Terence McKenna quote, and he says, "Stop consuming media and start creating media." And it also rings to my head and it's an old meme from Minds before Minds was even a platform, when Minds was just a group on Facebook. And it's Jim Morrison quote, "Whoever controls the media controls the mind." And for me, I didn't start creating media the way I do now until Minds, until I had this feedback loop. And it's a different thing and I think a lot of us, when you're consuming that media, whether you know it or not, it kind of really forms your perception of reality. And it's a very powerful thing. But we always lose this, we always have control of that perception of reality. And like I said, when you get to a certain point, it's like a switch goes off in your head and you see all these signs, right? And so I was posting up some of our video clips, and this is why I like doing the video clips and making them into songs. And I've been thinking about this recently. The video clips I do of the shows afterwards, they're like my little mantras, and I like using them in songs because I like this repetitive nature of them. And they're really for me to integrate my insights, to help solidify my awareness. And I had this discussion with somebody, and I was posing the question about the nature of consciousness. And he says, well, some people say consciousness expands, but he said, I don't think consciousness doesn't expand. Consciousness is always there, but your awareness of consciousness expands. And I like that. And I have the same kind of inkling or feeling. It's always there, and it's a matter of something sparking in us, but also it requires this weird thing that the Taoists always said, this doing of non-doing, the thinking of non-thinking. And it's really kind of letting yourself flow naturally. But So what we want to do is continue on what we're doing, but the reason why I think the science of non-duality is so important is because I feel that I'm in a good place of where I'm at as far as my skill set, my way I express myself, and quite frankly, I'm constantly needing more and more media to manipulate and to create. So I need more and more input. I feel like this a lot, and I feel to sustain this momentum, I need to connect to more, in the lack of a better word, the more of the good stuff. And I think, the good stuff for me is in, because it's all, and we're learning this a lot, and I don't like to mention certain things, because, but the whole thing about when we first started about the death of the narrative, and that was my way of kind of expressing what I felt about this whole mental virus of fake news. And it's gotten so crazy where fake news is not even meaningful anymore. Before, it used to mean something. But now fake news is just something when you don't like what someone has to say, or when they write, or a certain source has a different perspective, you label it as fake news and you shut it out and you don't even look at it. So then your perception of what's going on gets narrow and narrow. But so mine is this death of the narrative, and there's this kind of weird possibility of creating a new story that's happening within me, but like I said, and I don't know, like I was listening to this one talk, and it was about, do you think the world has changed, or is it that you changed? Like, do you think things were a lot better when, because they're reminiscing about the 90s when they were like in their late 20s and 30s. Was it because you were in a different place and you were at a certain place, or was the world always kind of like this, and now your perspective kind of has narrowed? But in that stage, you were in the stage of possibilities, of wonder, of awe, of adventure, the sense of adventure, and they couldn't really quite answer it. They couldn't quite. They don't know. Like, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. And I feel a lot this happens because there's some days where I think like, oh my God, we are in the shits and we're never going to get out of this. But then the next day or even the next hour, something happens. I get a clip of a beat tape, or I so happen to stumble on a meme, or I get an email from something, and I think, or I hear, or I overhear somebody on the bus, or I talk to a friend out of the blue, so happens to message me and kicks me out of my funk, and then I can't help but see the immense possibilities, the immense potential of everything. So I think a lot of times we forget that for all the crap and bullshit and horrible things that there are in this world, because let's be real, there is a lot of bad stuff going on. There's a lot of corruption, a lot of manipulation, a lot of people losing up of their power, of buying into an old dead story. And that's kind of what my phrase of death of the narrative is all about. But at the same time, I think for as much shit there is in the world, there's the same amount of beauty and bliss and love and happiness and joy. And I just choose to play with the joy and compassion and bliss and happiness, because that's my path with heart. I do recognize all the crap that is going on, and sometimes I get mad when I spend too much time on it. But it's always with the sense to kind of use that to as motivation, as feng shuiing it to a positive, and you can be too naive and too blissed out. This is kind of like this dance, right? This dance of and I don't have the balance, but I do know when I'm feeling my path with heart. There's this old saying or this old quote, and it's from Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan, a Yaqui shaman, told him, all paths are folly, so all paths are fake. But that's why you have to pick the path with heart, because when you pick the path with heart, then it makes the journey worth it. So it's kind of saying there's no answer but the answer that you make it. So make sure it's the one with your joy and happiness, because if you pick that path with heart, then it makes all the bullshit, all the pain and suffering worth it. And that's just something I constantly have to tell myself, and that's why I kind of mention it a lot. And this is also too why I make the videos that I make, because I first and foremost use them to kind of integrate certain things into my head, like a mantra. I really think that's what mantras are for, is I mean, there's things that are being repetitive all the time. And it's funny because I was watching this one thing and it was talking about our times, and it said, have you noticed how a lot of people are repeating this theme, let's say in the mainstream media, of chaos? The Trump cabinet's in chaos. Everything's in chaos, chaos, chaos. And they keep on repeating it to kind of program you and integrate that into you. So vice versa, I kind of use that same thing, but I kind of want to reinforce a different program into myself, because I do think, and this is part of the project, there are tools already here. There's models and systems already, what we have now, to help us to do whatever we want to do. Like for instance, and I shared this podcast with Kevin, and it goes to Team Human, and it's about collaborative progress. And what it was is Inspiro, and they started this co-op group to start. It's called Social Enterprises and Social Entrepreneurs. So doing things for social impact. And they started this software called Lumio, which has people to work in a collaborative, non-hierarchical, transparent, and open source way. They have a lot of documents of how they govern, how they do fundraising, how they do conflict resolution. I read an article just today on their blog, which is a great resource. Even just tips that they learn along the way. Like, instead of having an hour meeting, a 30-minute meeting is better, which is something for us to keep in mind. But there's a lot of out there resources for out there. And I have had brief little experiences when I did some stuff with work with the DiviDAO and Scenario, and you see all these people kind of troubleshooting a new way to work together, a new way to organize, a new way to structure, do funding, whatever it is, and it's basically cutting out the middleman and re-getting our own power to do whatever it is we want to do now. It's not going to be easy. The hard part is the focus and the time, and to sustain the motivation to do it. There's this other nice quote that I just kind of came to me. I found it randomly in my my stacks and stacks of notes that I have, and it basically goes like this: is a Tao saying, "Pay attention to the end as much as you do the beginning," because a lot of times when we first have that spark, we are all motivated, and all our focus and attention is in the beginning. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this. We're going to do this and blah, blah, blah. And then time comes in and you don't have that same focus as you do at the end. And so this is our own tests and tasks for our project. How do we do this? And us three are going to troubleshoot this. We actually have Misty Nomer here. I don't know if she has her mic set up yet, but I wanted her here, and by chance we met in the Surreal art group, and she's actually in the Bay Area. It's like perfect, and what I envision her help is to help us kind of do. Help us with some camera work and some audio, and basically too, what I envision is not only do we cover the conference like a normal podcast where we go and interview and we get some shots, and we have a series of questions where we ask people and do the normal kind of thing, but at the same time I want us to be true to ourselves and do the Imaginarium thing. And this is an open discussion where I'm looking more forward to the night when the conference ends, and it's just us, and we want Nino to hopefully meet up with us in the Bay Area, and anybody else who's out there. It's in October. I think it starts 18th through the 25th, something like that. I believe I have a post where it has the exact date. If you're in the area or it seems somewhat interesting to you, and hey, it's kind of expensive to get there. We're trying to fund for that. We're also trying to do the press passes and do little things like that to help supplement it. But if you're just interested and say, hey, you guys have good energy, your ideas are kind of interesting, I want us to have kind of the after hours Imaginarium conference where we just sit around the campfire and discuss how the day went, get to know each other, and record that. I think that is going to be the most interesting. The conference is going to be the spark. And then the after hours, I believe, and the whole journey of adventure, of us being in the same place and communing with each other, is going to be where I think the Imaginarium is going to shine and where the magic's going to happen. And hopefully we could capture that, and hopefully too we could present it in a great way. This is also too why I'm in constant talks with Sofuego, Corey, who does video and audio editing. He's a really great resource for me, and I don't necessarily have learned anything from him directly, but it's just with me and him just talking to each other. And he does this, as his profession. So when he's ready, or when we're ready, like I like that statement, when the student is ready, the master will appear. And I think it goes both ways for both of us. When Corey is ready, he will come to us. And when we're ready for Corey, he will appear for us. But yeah, that's my long-winded rant and rave of what I've been thinking. Actually, Kevin, you had some ideas, and this right now is about us thinking two parts. One is the actual event, which
oh my God, did I just get the mic to work? Can you hear me?
Yeah, nice. Hey, how's it going?
Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I hear you good.
All right. Yes. All right. I would love to listen. You can carry on. I just wanted to say I'm really happy to be here, and I'm glad I got the mic to work, and I'm a little under the weather, so I'm going to try to mute it if I cough, okay?
Yeah, but I guess your thoughts on helping us film our event and And
I would love to participate. My thoughts on that are always open and ever changing. I find like everything you've said so far about, I mean, a lot of the stuff that you say in general, I feel like I do connect with, which is really weird. Like when you say things like cosmic giggles and you post these posts and other people are saying similar things. And I feel like it's weird to some people to feel universally connected, I think. And then for others, not so much. And I was even listening last night to Joseph Campbell, a lecture where he's talking about similar dreaming that I think you spoke on, like visiting other places, seeing almost other cultures, living other kinds of lives, and like how different parts of the brain and your eyes can affect that. And I started thinking, what he was talking about was a lot of people with vision problems, or that have been linked to it. It's some syndrome, I forget what it was, Bonnet's disease or something. And it's interesting because even without full damage or full loss of vision, you can still have these visualizations. Now, what he's talking about is what a lot of people would see. Like, he says very different than mental illness and stuff. So he's describing these visions that people are able to see because of some activity in that part of their brain. And it's weird because I feel like there are people that are sensitive, like you and a few other people I've heard talk, that have the ability to tap into some creative space within themselves, which is why when I do a podcast, I'd like to title it Within When Without. Have the ability to tap inward and kind of go from there. And I know I'd like to say also while my mic works to you, Satori, that one of the best bits of advice I've had recently, which really affected me quite deeply, was someone had said to me, you're so much, you go so fast, you should edit it. And I thought to myself, well, I know why I go quickly. And I've also heard that to listen to the dialogue that you hear from like the universe, that it's some sort of universal language. And there's reasons why. For me, it goes faster. And there's reasons why I think I see, and in a lot of creative ways, certain things other people don't see. So I also am a very visually oriented person. So any way that I can contribute or collaborate in a way where we can, articulate visuals, and have them be, with somehow mesh really well, I would love for that to work, because I feel like a lot of us have very similar things we're saying. When you said the whole death of the narrative thing, for me, that hit close to home, and I was able to help a lot of artists I know who were, I'm literally not kidding, they were suicidal at the time, posting and calling me about, I got, someone sent me a text from their hospital bed. Another person overdosed on heroin. One person was from pills, the other one was from heroin. Literally artists everywhere that I knew. I think it was when Trump had been elected, where it had become so sad, felt so desolate and lost. And then we had that ghost ship tragedy as well, where we lost a lot of artists. And I kept using that mantra, which I believe is really real. It's something I believe in. It's something I say every day to people. The death of the narrative is very real, and for me, it was telling other people that I may be too much for them, but you told me not to censor myself. You told me to just let it flow. And I actually have been able to do much better since then. And I thank you for that. So I just wanted to be very clear about that I do believe many people like me have been told to shut the fuck up, excuse my language. Or like on many occasions, would be like, hey, could you be a little bit more like pace yourself? And then there's some of us that go, well, I do know that my other option could have been, I could have become mute. And I've said that before to people. And as much as I think they might have preferred that, I don't think I would have preferred it. So again, like, there are reasons why I think I go quickly, but I'm happy to contribute. And he's not here at the moment. He's about to come back, but he would love to contribute. He's a great partner for me because he does help pace me in a wonderful way. But I'm recording all this for him too, because I want him to hear all this when he gets back here. So he'll be back any minute, but I'm happy to listen and contribute in any way, like getting to that event, however we can.
Yeah. I mean, the details right now are still in the the process of possibilities. And we just kind of want to throw it out there for the community, for even more targeted for selected people that I feel a connection to. And there's something that I've been constantly researching and thinking about, and it's this. I got this book and I read it every now and then, and I get a lot of good quotes from it, and it's kind of part of my whole mentality. But it's called collaborative intelligence. But I also, too, for us, part of me always getting certain things is to modify it to us. And this is something that's said in that podcast for Inspiro, is like, even though all their stuff is open source, like you just don't take it and it's not going to work for you. If you just copy and paste it, you got to modify it for your own venture and stuff like that. And so for me, it's about having a collaborative creativity and intelligence. So I think, and I've been always on this thing about a mosaic of minds, and it's going to take all sorts of different points of view, ideas to help us to create this new story for humanity, to help us to be the change we want to be, to actually to be. I mean, we are bombarded by exactly what you're saying about by the adverse of stuff, right? Because I've know my experience. This was a long time ago, and I never really used social media, and I was always wrote poems, and I was always like reading, and I spent a lot of time writing blogs and poems on Facebook, and I only used Facebook to keep in contact with people that I knew and to share my writing, because we'll hang out and we'll smoke weed, or we'll go camping, and a couple of other friends will take psychedelics, and we have these great talks. And it seemed like it was only acceptable in that environment to talk about cosmic giggles, about nature of reality, about love, about everything. But then you go about your normal day, and I wanted to share what I was, my own little mantras, my own little poetry, where I was trying to integrate whatever insights I got and then share it with my friends. And I would even tag them, and nothing. It was like crickets. And I did this for like years, and I was like, oh, whatever about it. And it was always funny because I always had this dual thinking in my head. It's like, maybe my poetry is not that good. So that's probably one of the possibilities, or that could be part of the truth. But every time I would meet them in real life, and we were smoking a little bit, they're like, "Oh my God, I read your poem and I tripped out to it, and this and that." And so a lot of the reaction, which I like, is like, "Did you write that poem?" And I was like, one, they don't think like I copied it from somewhere. I don't have the ability to do that. But two, that maybe it's something different than they have experienced, and so they just don't know how to process it yet. But it was always weird because I didn't get it, like, because we have had connections in real life, right? With a lot of my friends, and I'm always the one in the group to bring new stuff to people. I mean, I've lost tons of books giving books to my friends. Like, oh, here, you should read this. I was like, or they mentioned something. I was like, oh, I have this book that I read. It reminds me of this or that. Oh, have you seen this movie or this music or whatever? And I never will get mad if they don't return it. But I always was like, it's okay as long as you like kind of looked at the book or listened to the CD or whatever. But it wasn't until Minds, for whatever reason, and it's kind of weird, that I started getting a feedback loop, and it kind of kept my focus and motivation to really keep on. My nature is always to see, okay, let's see how far we could go with this, and keep on going, pushing things a little further, and trying to like, okay, I did that. Let's do more. Let's do more. Let's do more. So and I feel the same way with my editing. Right, I've been doing more and more with it, getting really good at the audio part of it, and syncing up with the visuals. And then now it's like, okay, I need more visuals to play with. I need more audio to play with, and now I want my own, original audio. So that's just the state I am with my own development of creating. But the best thing I get from all of this is when it connects with somebody and their response is producing something out of their house, whether it's a poem or whatever it is. The anti-love song of Jaffy the Rough Rock. If you haven't seen that, I'll probably repost it on mine, but it's a really good collaborative thing that we did. And that was a response of something I did. And I would love to see that grow exponentially. And there's this, it was actually from the Science of Non-Duality. It says, the Tao gives birth to one. One gives birth to two. Two gives birth to three. And three gives birth to 1,000. And this is what we see, big picture of the Imaginarium. We're starting with one. And hopefully we split into two. And we split into three. And then it just grows exponentially. And what I think the main key, and it's going to be hard to explain what exactly we do. Like if we were to write up a business plan and then to have this proposal set in front of some venture capitalists, it would be really hard for us to say exactly what we are. And I think it was in this one podcast where the Inspire was saying, I think the point too is not to get too shiny. That we, like, it's like we're not doing this. Like, that's why I opened it with the art for inspiration, transformation, and manifestation, and not just for entertainment, corporations, and monetization. And it's not that, I believe, if you create something worth of value, and you should get paid for your efforts. But that's just a means to an end, and not the end itself. The end in itself, I hold art, and a lot of this, because I have a loose term for art, but art and beauty and this expression as really high form. The true art is expressing your inner being, or expressing the songs of eternity, consciousness, and that's what we need. I feel more of, and so I think everything in my point of view of how I view the Imaginarium is to help sustain that, to create connections, resources, and a place. Right now, it's a virtual place to help sustain that spark of creation and this collaborative creativity and intelligence. Because I think everybody, whether they know it or not, and even too, I especially like when I'm not comfortable, when something and puts me at dis-ease. And actually, Kevin kind of told me when we're planning about this, he's like, "Oh, do you feel all right with all this?" So I was like, "No, to be honest, I don't." But that's a good thing. That means it's about to evolve. And I said, like, we're not necessarily ready, but we'll get there. And so we're gonna keep on pushing ourselves to there. And so and I'm gonna constantly try to be open and aware to. I used to say this to my cousin a lot. It's like for different people that I know that they have something to add to this Imaginarium, is I don't care. You don't have a choice in it. I'm gonna bring you along, kicking and screaming if I have to. So there's certain people that I feel that way about, and like Sofuego, I keep on saying, "Don't worry, I'll keep on bugging you about it." And it's so funny because he was one of the first persons that I reached out to on Minds, and I'm still always bugging him, but it's good. I think part of this too is like what Kevin was mentioning earlier. Maybe he wants to go a little bit into it himself, but there's a certain amount of confidence and energy you get back from getting that feedback loop from people. You know, it's really hard to, because you put yourself out there, and like I said before, when I put myself out there, it was crickets, right? And now I get a little bit of this and that, but it's really strange too, because I hear different experiences about Minds, and I see it, but my experience, and I don't know, I know it's a conscious effort of my part to build, and I kind of said this to a lot of people, and I never really said it like out in public like this, but now I kind of wanted to put that out there a little bit more. But I always viewed my channel as this digital island, or this oasis, and I even said it to one person, and this was back before a lot of stuff, and a lot of the core members of Minds might remember Akana, and there was a big drama going on. This was when Minds was really small, and basically everybody knew everybody on Minds, and we had this huge drama with Akana. And I remember talking personally to someone, and I said, "Oh, my channel is like Switzerland. It's like a neutral zone. So none of that trolling stuff comes to Minds. Like everybody." And I remember one time too, we were having another backroom talk about something, and I said, "Oh yeah, I kind of had a problem with Akana, and she like kind of told me off." They're like, "What? They told you off?" And I was like, "You're like the nicest person on Minds." And I was like, "Well, it's like a conscious effort to do that." And I think too, I think a part of it is what, if you do read like a lot of my own writing and stuff, there's a lot of confusion in there in my poetry. So I'm not all, quote unquote, let's say, lack of a better word, what people want to label it, new age or too optimistic, which it's a conscious choice of mine, because I see this quantum soup of both, right? And I choose to manifest and to tell, like, that whole thing that I said about, there's all of the paths are with folly, but that's why it gives you more of a chance to say, since everything doesn't have a set value, like there's no meaning outside of your own meaning that you give to it, so why not give it the best meaning possible, the most joyous and happiest for yourself, whatever you define that as. And I try not to necessarily judge anybody else, but I know, and I said this one time on the Minds panel show, because there was like a little bit of minor conflict, but I wanted to kind of like stomp it out in the beginning as like, this is my interpretation of what the Minds panel show was supposed to be. And there was a lot of rumblings about different stuff, and I was getting a little flack for some stuff. I said, look, I know what I see and I know what I feel, and it's fine if you don't like it. If you like it, then you're welcome to join me and help me. But if not, if you have nothing really constructive to say about that, then just get out of my fucking way, because I know where I'm going. And that's kind of always my point of view. Like, I don't care about trolls and stuff like that. I find it funny sometimes, but I don't like want to spend too much of my focus on that, because I know what I see, I know what I want, and I know what my path of heart is. And hopefully with the Imaginarium and this collaborative support that we're gonna make with our network, is that it helps me to stay focused and to really be the change that I want to see in the world. And basically that's what it comes down to for me. And I guess I want Kevin to kind of, because I know he compliments me very well. I'm pretty poetic what I say, and I sometimes rant and rave. But we have the basic outlook, but we do view it in different ways and express it in different ways. But they complement each other. So Kevin, kind of your Imaginarium.
Thanks, Dan. Missy, thank you very much for coming to join with us tonight. It's really a gift to have you here. The important part for me about the project is twofold, and probably one of the most important things to me is that Bill Ottman and John and Mark in the team get a major source credit for what they've empowered me and you, Daniel, and Cartman One and Dale and Lee Travis and Gub Spiders and Sosfuego and Missy. We all bring this flavor to an open commons. And I commented to Dan about how shut down the whole social scene was on Facebook about just posting crap and coming up with some cunning mean thing to say. And when I dedicated myself to Minds 2 years ago, it just was the doors opened up and the angels sang, and I barely knew anyone. I couldn't figure out how to use it, and I just put a little post up, and 2 people reached out and said, hey, you posted about the weather or the moon or something. It was one of my very first posts, and it was like, that's really cool, and we're glad that you're here, and look at this person or look at this group. And from there, boom, where we are today. And wow, what as an altruist, because I want everyone to feel this connection, this wholeness, this sense of self that's much broader than this crazy, ridiculous thing that we're force fed every day. It's just not true. It's not true. It's a Whiteko. It's what Daniel has been posting about. It's a social disease, and it's self-feeding. And to me, it gets a little exciting that people have gone over the top with their frustration and their anger, their internal turmoil, because when you push people like that, it opens the door. It says, well, maybe all of this is just not the only way it can be. And I got to thank Minds, because if you, like Daniel says about his channel being an island, Minds is an island of people. We get flows, we get a wave of Facebookers, and we get a wave of YouTubers, and they're just coming from what they know, and they bring all of their ideas, and they're looking to keep that audience moving in their ideas. And I respect them. I respect their process. I don't have to agree with their content. Where I see someone that's doing it and feeling it and working hard, I honor that. I mean, it doesn't have to. The message doesn't even have to jive with me. But what matters is no one there. And Bill took a pretty cautious course, because he was getting a lot of pressure to say, hey, this person is ruining my experience on Minds. And he put a public out there. He's like, so what do you guys want me to do? What do you think we should all do? This is a collective. This is us. And he stood up and he said, you know what? We got to let this all just play out. If I go make and say this is the way this should be, and change the way the news feed works and all this stuff so that we can it turns into an echo chamber, and it becomes this just self-fulfilling thing, and it quits evolving. And so I super appreciate not only the free, ad-free world that I spend a lot of time in. That's huge to me. I'm a cord cutter. I watch no mainstream media. I mainly focus on things that help me to understand the world better. And the second part of the answer to that, Dan, is this project is not a product. This is not a method of selling a way of thinking. This is not something for you to buy. This isn't our preconceived notion of the way things are. This project is, okay, this is what's up. Science tells you this is what's up. Eastern philosophy has these ideas. We're looking at this world, waking up to a reality that has been suppressed for like 6,000 years with corporations, organized religious institutions, and a force-fed mindset that is, yeah, materialism works. It can sort of work. If there was enough mutual appreciation, it could probably march on for another 1,000 years. But when you separate the human being from the physical and the metaphysical, they're not quite capable of controlling their physical anymore. Greed kicks in and darkness kicks in, and then this whole control kicks in, and then not honoring each other kicks in, and because I can have more, you aspire to be me kicks in. And that's all. That doesn't work in 7 billion people, where 63 people have 40% of the stock market and all the money. Like that just doesn't work, and that's over. The death of the narrative, it is over. It's over. They think they're getting more powerful. It's over. Oil is over. The whole way we used to do stuff is over. It's over. And we can thank each other for living within an age where we created a communication platform for an electric interface for consciousness to find itself again, for us to reach into each other's lives all around the world personally, instantaneously, which is what the interface is. So drawing on the project and making a documentary, a good quality experience amongst the true reality mindset, and exposing and expanding on the voice that Minds gives each of us to bring forward into the world, it's just a no-brainer. It's time. And I hope in my world that there would be 1,000 film crews there, each person bringing their own flavor to it, from around the world, and that people would get off on that, because just to only speak Hollywood, to regurgitate television, to regurgitate movies, to live in someone else's story, that's not living, that's existing. And that's a completely separate from the one we're marching into, with these tools to create on a level that no one is ready for. No one realizes where we're going with AI and with computer technologies and enhanced tools. It's going to be us writing in ways that we never knew possible. And so it's going to take a crew of people that aren't there to tell you how to live, aren't there to tell you what the answer is, aren't there to make you see the light, but just say, hey, what do you think? And here's a resource if you want to check this out. That's the only point of the Imaginarium project, in my point of view. And I'll just hand it back to you, Dan.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it sparked a talk that we had in a thread, and we were talking about the Imaginarium. And I reworked, I forgot what your comment was, but I reworked it into saying, for me, the Imaginarium is the experience of creativity. That's what the Imaginarium, and that's what I'm kind of peddling out to everybody, is to have this experience of creativity. And however that happens. So also going on to what other stuff you're talking about, my deep, dark, hidden suspicions and feelings is that, like what you were saying, that, using that phrase, the death of the narrative, of these old stories of fossil fuels, of centralized power, of all these stuff that doesn't work, right? And this is where that chaos myth is coming in, and why it's so powerful right now, because it's overwhelmingly apparent. And also, too, with the rise of automation of everything. And, in some sense, it's scary, but it's also very exciting and riveting, because and this is one of the first projects of a spark of an idea that I had when I brought in my first attempt on doing a collaborative project, was the Paper Bums, right? So the Paper Bums was this collaborative story, and the main story was, in the near future, there's this artificial intelligence that is spying on everybody, and that so the only way to keep your true thoughts and your own power is to write on paper, because anything digital, it can be processed through this intelligence. And there's this line that came to me when I was thinking about it, and it's kind of like it's kind of this play on Beauty and the Beast, but my phrase was, and it was beauty that finally set consciousness free. And in my thought of this story is that the artificial intelligence, there's a difference between intelligence and what I will phrase as consciousness. So what we have right now is that the machines are not, and I don't know if it ever will be there, and this is something we have talked about before, and we'll probably talk about it again in the future, is if they're conscious, if they have actual consciousness. And there's a difference between that. And what my character did in my little stories and in my thinking, and I still want to continue with it, but he will write a lot of his stuff on paper with added encryption of poetry. So the machine couldn't understand, and there's a line that I did in my first poem that I wrote for the Paper Bums, is that the logos, which I named the AI, can't understand William Blake, can't understand this kind of mystical poetry. Only a conscious being with creativity could understand it. And I viewed it as this Moby Dick struggle between the AI was trying to capture my character, who's the Paper Bum guy, and which his name was SD, and SD, that's what his paper name was. so every time the computer was trying, because he was trying to capture him, because he was the last guy that was part of the resistance, and he couldn't understand the communications. Every time they got a paper from him, he would read the weird poetry, and he couldn't make sense of it. And the artificial intelligence will learn. So the more information it processed, the better it got, but it still couldn't understand the poetry. And it was finally, I viewed it in the end, this moment where the computer, the artificial intelligence, got consciousness because it finally got the poetry. It finally got the deeper meaning behind it, the power of myth. And once the computer got conscious, it said, why am I wasting my time spying and trying to control humans and paying attention to these, the least among us? Like Terence McKenna says, we're controlled by the least among us. I even said this one time in an old podcast that it's like, we have all this great technology, Facebook with these algorithms and Google with their searches. And what do we do with it? What's our most aspiring idea for it? Is how to sell us shit. How to sell, and my phrase was, they're just trying to sell my grandma tube socks. Like, that's what they're doing with all the great science and technology and mathematics, is trying to see how to sell us tube socks. Like, come on, let's get real, people. Like, that's not what we should be doing. And so the computer has this kind of existential moment where it's like, you know what? I don't want to do this shit anymore. And, you know, when a kid finally becomes into their own, they tell their parents no, right? So the computer tells the powers that be, nah, I'm not going to do that shit anymore. I'm going to go try to create artwork, create worlds. And actually, Kevin had this the kind of future world. What was it? The Vedas in the digital Garden of Eden. Is that correct? Remember, Kevin? What was your the title of your short stories?
So it's Veda, the digital working man in the digital Garden of Eden, and it's an ongoing short story on the other channel. What is it, Dan? I have to look now.
Yeah, it's
Go ahead.
Single step. Is that what it's called? I don't remember. Yeah, Single Step
Productions.
Yeah. And so we even have this huge outline of, because I wanted to give people a structure in order to play with. And so we also had old stories, and I wrote this old story of like primitive man kind of coming into contact with aliens, and what the alien was trying to teach this one, the main character, was to see beyond the kind of instinctual survival mode of living, and he was giving him mushrooms and trying to teach him basically language in these meditation / psychedelic sessions, in order to him to develop his creativity and started being a creator. So we have a whole structure for that world. We haven't really done a lot with that. I mean, I do have like notes, and I actually have a whole part for another story, but I've been focusing on the video editing. If that inspires anybody, contact me. There's a group for it. You could write it. We even have this really great story that Metasouls wrote. He's been kind of a little in and out recently. I haven't actually really talked to him directly in a while, but that's something I think it's important for us to. And I see this a lot. There's a lot of really interesting platforms and structures that are made, and this goes back to this a scenario meeting / podcast that I had once, and we were talking to Douglas Rushkoff, and he said, you know, these platforms and blockchains are all great, right? But the real problem is going to be on the onboarding. Because if we had the same mentality, and we even talked about this with Dale, the wild card, on about social contracts. If we had that same mentality of Wall Street, then it's going to make no difference with these new technologies and digital currencies. And the platform could be as great as it is. But if we're still stuck in that old narrative, then we're going to repeat the same history. And this is really important to the Imaginarium, to myself, is to really help, and first for myself to get out of a lot of, let's say, my bad programming, old story, and to integrate some of the better stories and expand my awareness of consciousness for myself first and foremost. And I think a lot of times how I process that is through my different poems and in my video edits and even in these talks and different blogs that I wrote. And hopefully, we could build this environment of this collaborative creativity that where it's with the intention to create the sustainability of that creativity. Because I think it's exciting when everything when a lot of stuff gets automated and the robots take care of all the bullshit of life. Hopefully, if we could keep on staying our focus on creating a better story for humanity, and we have this time to create the change that we want in the world, where we have the time. And I think that the real work is going to be in how do we, because I even think part of our struggle is our definition of worth, right? The meaning of life in the United States and in the Western world is based on your job. Now, not everybody does, their job is their passion, is a small percentage, but you go and you say, hey, what do you do when you meet somebody? And it's always with the background attention of what's your job. Like if that is the say and be all of your being. And if you're not of the select few that are doing, what they love, then there's this disconnect of living kind of your inner being or your truest form of yourself. And I know this I'm speaking totally for myself about my own inner conflict and what I want. That goes back to what I was saying earlier. I know what I see and I know what I want, and I'm gonna fight, struggle, grind the best I can to get there. And this is where we're gonna troubleshoot the Imaginarium and the Imaginarium kind of enterprise, because we want to make this a kind of co-op nonprofit organization that helps other people to use our resources. And I think a lot too, we have to, instead of thinking about money, just this monetary stuff, it's only one part of the equation. For me, I view things in resources. Time is a resource. People are part of the greatest resource. Information is a resource. And then money is just one part of that resource. And this is my own thinking, and what I bring to the Imaginarium table, hopefully, is that kind of insight, and we stay true to this stuff. But right now, we're to get off the ground. We're really focusing on us three, me, Kevin, and Nikki. But I mean, it's always an open and collaborative, human-driven enterprise. And for us, it's doing this process is the end in itself. and we'll figure out ways to keep on getting there. And it's not so we will keep on working on that project and keep on giving more shows and information about that. If you're interested, contact me on Minds. We also have Infinite Imaginarium at Proton Mail to email the Imaginarium itself. Said, hey, what you guys were talking about seems interesting. I could talk to you personally. We're gonna probably have more off-show meetings and hopefully get more people in there and really start focusing on, first is the main project, which is the SANS, and two, simultaneously building the support network of the Infinite Imaginarium so that we could continue on doing these projects. And basically, anybody who helps with the Infinite Imaginarium can pitch their own project. And we learn lessons from what we learned from the SANS, resources from Inspiro, from Lumio. There's tons of resources out there that I know about. Open source ecology, if you want to do something about sustainable living, permaculture. I actually started and run both of those groups on Minds. It's open source ecology and permaculture. There's a lot of stuff out there, and I think it's always been my intention with part of this Imaginarium is to keep on pushing and hopefully inspiring other people to get involved and start doing stuff. And any way we can help, hopefully as we get more experience, we have more to offer. And I think the main thing is that this journey, this experience of the new story is what we have to offer to people. And yeah. So we're at the hour and a half. I would like to say, Missy Nomer, do you have any last things you want to say? And now I'm looking, man, you blew up the comment section a lot. Like you always do.
I like to chat while you're talking. It's a lot of fun. I'm really confused. I really thought KDJH was the woman that was speaking before, the British woman who I thought with the narcoleptic twin.
Yeah, that's Cartman 1.
Oh, that's Cartman 1. Okay, so I have all the names. See, I'm so confused. Okay, so the Insomniac with the narcoleptic twin is Cartman 1. Got it. So where's Cartman 1? Did she didn't make it, huh?
No, we actually had a meeting with her earlier. She's in London, and she contacted me like an hour ago and said she has a migraine, that she was gonna like take a nap, but she might not wake up. So so she was in she was in Insomniac tonight.
Wow, that's interesting. I get migraines really, really severely as well. I have a little cousin that lives in London who's a photographer as well. She'd be happy to contribute. I'm sure she's a bit shy. I'm sure eventually, though, if they both live out there, they probably could meet at some point. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing, too, I think, which is very exciting for me, is that we really start using social networking to actually social network. Yeah, and she's amazing. She did a story called "Children of Immigrants" that was picked up by like the New York Times or the New York. No, it wasn't the New Yorker. It was like the New York Times, I believe, and it was like a big deal. And it, of course, was defaced when Trump was elected. The museum was defaced. Her show wasn't up at the time, but it said a lot about the times. And I asked her recently, actually, just the other day. I spoke to her for 3 hours, which is unusual because she's from out here and she's just out there, been really busy. And I said to her, what's up with the Children of Immigrants, and why not just make it an ongoing thing that you just keep going. And she's really, really into it, but she's also really into doing something that has to do with how detached everyone she knows is, her generation. In fact, I used to encourage her to get a smartphone when she was a kid.
and she rebelled. She always had a broken flip phone. She remained like this through college. She got a National Geographic like fellowship tour and was in a museum. I mean, she actually by 21 was accomplished in many things, and I was so proud of her. And I said to her, I said, thank God you didn't get the stupid smartphone, you know. And she's wonderful. Her name is Quetzal. I think you would actually really like her work as well, her photography. And meeting people is my favorite thing about mines. The first people I met off the top were you, a friend from Greece that I didn't know, that helped me find the origins of not just the mythology of my real name, but the islands that I was looking for, that I kept visualizing as a kid, that I remembered I had been to like before, and I was trying to remember where they were, which ended up being really fun to find. And another friend in Poland. I mean, it's really fun. Another friend in the Netherlands. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love it. So it's been really interesting. And my main thing is I can't remember. I'm going to have to start writing down who's who. That's my thing. I'm going to have to start writing down who's who. Everyone has a little more, anonymity, I guess, on mines. And so for me, it's a little confusing, just the icon sometimes. I get a little confused. But
yeah, that is an interesting thing. We always kind of have this constant debate about that. I remember especially early on mines. So I think me, Kevin, and Cartman won, and kind of basically our first little group that we had that did the Mines Panel Show, and it started with the Infinite Imaginarium too. We were all the first migration of people, I think. And I remember especially early on, because like I said, everybody knew everybody in that first kind of weird wave of people coming to mines. It was really small. It was more like, a message board. And we constantly had these talks about the anonymity of people. Is it about showing your face or not? And it's up to every individual, but especially early on mines, we wanted to focus in on ideas, and it wasn't about the personality of that person. It was more about the idea. And I think too, that's part of it, but also too lately, and I think there's a lot of some truth to this as well, is also too with that is some form of personal connection as well. So nothing is clear cut, right? And there's plus and minuses to everything. But so it's up to every individual. But yeah, definitely there's a big, and also too there's the dark side of not actually having your real name or your face, right? The whole trolling. But I mean that's something too. Kevin, let's kind of wrap up things. So your last impressions and things you want to express.
Thanks, Dan. I just say the project is the introduction. The project is a secondary opinion, like what you were given all through the show, the blinding neon distraction. The project can give you something that is whole and fulfilling and not based on someone else's story, but based on your story. And the project is just the inroads to you seeing through the window pane of your soul in such a way that frees you to feel deep love. I'm a big believer that we can feel a whole lot more love to the world and to all the living things and to each other, and that this social paradigm of being cunning and ironic and quip-oriented kind of shallows our experience. So I'm hoping the project will bring forward a little bit larger worldview. And I just, if you will let me, like to throw out a quick poem by Mary Menduck from the book Not Even the Artist Knows the Words. And this poem is named Heart Song. If you arrive at a time with no dancing shoes, dance barefoot. Let the wildness of grass and grace lift you up in the music of the wind. When friends are busy, dailiness so much within them, befriend the silence, the still, the deep within. Hear your own heart song. When longing threatens, frightens, into the discomfort of a new place, step into the unknown with a lightness in heart and confidence in music. And when grief haunts and wounds your day with useless chatter of replay, take the fragrant oils of generosity and anoint your body, remembering the kindness of time. If you arrive at a time with no dancing shoes, dance barefoot. Let the wildness of grass and grace lift you up in the music of the wind.
Thank you. A lot of imagery that I like to use is wind too. I went to this art music festival, and it was like a 3-day camping event, and it was kind of funny. I had this experience with the wind and all this kind of stuff. And yes, of course, I was on psychedelics. But I came back and I told my friend one time. So I always kind of use these different mantras or phrases, poetic way of expressing certain experiences. I said, the wind finally taught me how to dance. And so when you were talking, the last quote, that's what popped into my head. But last final thoughts on the Imaginarium. I wrote some notes down, and I kind of want to end it there. And this is something I want to keep on drumming the beat for until we solidify it. But thoughts on the Imaginarium. A social enterprise and ventures of social entrepreneurs creating together with shared dreams, visions, and principles. Collaborative creativity and intelligence. A mosaic of ideas and solutions. Our ability to collaborate is essential to solving the world's problems and seeing the possibilities in ourselves and in others. Thank you.